I like that you use your backlist as a conversation starter. I think that is pretty huge because also, like, if you're just sitting in the bar or whatever, you're at a conference and people ask you, what have you written? What are you working on? You can talk about your backlist in that way. Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 133 of the podcast, and it is October 11th, 2023, as we record this. Today, we are talking about Backlist and how to use it. We want to first thank our patrons for believing in our work offline and here as well on the podcast. You can go to patreon.com/Valerie Isan, IHSAN. And for as low as $1 a month, you can get a postcard from me, a shout out on the podcast. We can make announcements for you, read out the blurb for your books, those types of things. And in other tiers, the benefits increase: free books, accountability calls, scene analysis, mastermind calls, and even writer craft retreat tickets. Become a patron of the arts at patreon.com/Valerie Isan and patreon.com/Strange Air Stories for short stories in the paranormal mystery genre. I saw you just dropped another one.
Yeah. And I wrote that. I started writing that one, like, I think after our podcast last week.
That you one wrote it in less than a week and just blooped it up.
It just came forth fully formed. I knew beginning, middle, and end, and that is rare. And it's really short, so it sort of lent itself to getting out there quick. So
cool. I can't wait to read it.
It's a UFO story.
Ooh, just in time for spooky October, sorry, I guess.
Yeah. It's a UFO story. So if you like those, check it out. It's free as well. It's not in any of the tiers. You can just go on my Patreon page and just read it.
So your strategy has been putting a free one out every quarter or something like that?
I've put a free one out every quarter. I've seen that Patreon allows you to sort of change the you can change, like, you could take a story, put it out to your tiers, and then you can change it for a short period of time and make it free. So I'm going to start. I'm trying to get more people onto Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using Patreon for more things, and so I'm going to be using Patreon as more of the book launch. I'm going to host some things there so that when I'm asking people, hey, check out the free chapter, check out this, check out that, I'm going to put it on Patreon so they're going that way.
Oh,
and I'm also going to make.
Idea.
Yeah, I see a lot of authors and a lot of other creators doing that, where they've just essentially sort of used, your website is sort of your big platform, but then using this as a mini platform.
Mm-hmm.
For those types of things. Otherwise, you're pushing people into BookFunnel. You're pushing people sort of way out of your space. I like BookFunnel's pages, but there's no connectedness. So, like, once someone clicks on your BookFunnel page, it's great. They're on your BookFunnel page, but it doesn't go anywhere. At least if they're on Patreon and they're curious, they may click on, check it out, free story. Let's read it.
Cool.
Hey, I love this story. Let's subscribe. So.
Nice. And now they've changed it so that you can have followers on Patreon too. I
saw that.
Like, you don't have to even. So you don't even have to pay to be on Patreon. You can just have followers, and I think that would be. I wonder if they're going to try to turn it into sort of like not a social media, but a place where you can have followers, and then you can pay or not. And so I think that's actually pretty great. I like your idea, because you're going to have followers on that channel and you can do whatever you want there, videos, or, I put the podcast episodes up there, and so you can have engagement that way. And then, whenever they can just slip right over into the paid tiers if they want to. That's really cool. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Announcements. The early access to the early bird registration is happening now. So if you want access to the Writercraft retreat tickets for 2024, those go public November 1st. So if you want to get early access to early bird tickets, then now is the time to do it. And last year, before early bird closed, I had sold out. So just wanted to put that out there in case you wanted to get
on
in.
that.
The new anthology by Tsunami Press is just, it's being printed right now. And so it'll be out as really, really fast. We've got a pre-order link at tsunamibooks.org. And my SAI contact is in that. And you can pre-order Season of the Shadow right now on Amazon that's Erick's new title, and it comes out November 16th. Anything else you want to announce?
No.
No. What have you been doing this last week?
Well, this is like free write autumn.
Right.
I think that's what it's turning into. Which
she wrote a story. Yeah, that's what you did last week.
I did. I wrote that story. And yeah, like I'm taking advantage of this as I feel like I'm pretty locked in on the series and know where I know where it's going. I know the character arcs and things. And so being out of that feels like, like I'm getting extra playtime. And that's been missing in this creative world. I feel like being locked into the series is great. It feels like business. And I like that feeling. And when I'm writing it, I feel great too. But now, like, having this new thing that I've been working on, it's just kind of a novella. It doesn't fit into anything. Yeah, it just feels good to be writing something, and it's in a different voice than the regular series and the things I put out on Patreon. So it's kind of fun to be in like a more, it's in the first person. It's got like a little more of a flowery feel to it.
Is it in the same world, or is it completely different?
Just something completely different.
Are you going to put it up on Patreon, or what are you going to do with it?
I don't know what I'm going to do. It'll probably be 25,000 words when it's done. So it's sort of in that donut hole of like, not really a novel, not really I don't know what it is. There's a lot of traditional publishers, small presses that are publishing books of this length. There's not a lot. I wouldn't say a lot, but there's a few. And I figure, why not just maybe spend the early part of next year shopping it. It's just, just a query letter and some time. And so, yeah, I think there's this one. I've got another one I'm going to do for NaNoWriMo that I just sort of plotted out while on vacation, or plotted out just in sort of odd times. And I figure, like, I'm just going to take some time, play with these two things, see where they go. If they don't go anywhere, then I'll just, I'll self-publish them.
Well, I went
build a backlist.
I went to the Write on the Sound
writing you did
conference. That was really nice. It was a really good conference. I had not heard of it before this year, so I highly recommend it. It's a sweet little town. I want to go back and just sort of explore the downtown a little bit more. It's right on the Puget Sound. The venue, you could, if you were out on the dock, you could see the Puget Sound from there. It was really beautiful. And I did 2 talks, one on the core message of your memoir and one on transforming your manuscript from boring to badass. And that both of them were well attended. I had 40 to 80 people in both of them.
Oh, wow.
And
nice.
I got 50 new people on my mailing list. So that's a bonus for speaking. Yeah.
That's a
if you want to grow your mailing list, go speak at a conference. I got to meet Jamie Ford. That was kind of my fangirl moment. Neat. Yeah, that was really awesome. And I met, some really fun people. I really like them. So I'm going to be following them too. So that really consumed like my whole week, really, because I drove there Friday. I took a masterclass from Catherine Raven, who wrote Fox and I. She's a biologist and a writer too. But so that was cool. It was on a literary nature writing. So I got some cool tips on that. And then that was Friday. And then the conference was Saturday and Sunday. And then I drove home and was home at like 11:30 or something at night. Because Edmonds is about 5 hours away from us.
I guess I guess I have the announcement that I'm going to be teaching at Pike Peak Writers in Colorado Springs
Nice.
next year. So
When
there,
is the conference?
it's April 20. I think it's the last weekend in April. It's Jazz Up Your Writing. I'm going to be teaching 3 different courses during that time. So
That's excellent. What is the name of the conference? Pike
the
something?
Pikes Peak Writers Conference. I keep
Pikes
calling it
Peak.
Pike's Place because that's the big market in Seattle, and I've been to that market and I've never been to Pikes Peak. So yeah, it's Pikes Peak. It's Colorado Springs. I have it on good authority from friends who know Denver, that the Denver area, that it's beautiful. So yeah, looking forward to that.
And that's in April, you said?
April, yeah.
Okay, April 2024.
It's kind of weird to know what you're going to be doing in it, that far ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen at 3:00 today, but I know what's going to be happening in April. So.
Excellent. Okay, right on. Let's see. I think that's all for updates. I'm still reading Slammerkin. I'm almost done with it. And then I've got a lot of other books. There's like 3 more books I wanted to do for research for the Nanowrimo project. I am kind of like itching to read some of the new books I got at the conference though. So I'm just I'm not sure if I'll continue, maybe because you can be doing research as you're writing too. So I might slip in a couple of others, although I'm doing the, this is kind of a cheat, but I'm doing Becca Syme's 30 for 30, writing, spending 30 minutes on your manuscript every day for 30 days, and research counts. So I've been reading as my 30 minutes. So I haven't been plotting or anything yet for the NaNoWriMo book. I'm a little bit nervous about that. It's not really cheating, but kind of.
Come on, it's cheating. I'm calling Becca right now. Tell her what's going on.
What are you reading?
I am reading. Well, I kind of felt like a little odd dropping my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing last week. So I got serious. Now I've gotten serious. And now I'm reading The Most Expensive Mistress in Jefferson County by
oh, that's the title. That's the title?
That's the name. That's the title. The Most Expensive Mistress in Jefferson County.
Expensive. Hold on. Most expensive mistress?
Yeah, in Jefferson.
Jefferson County. Okay.
Picked it up at the Alaska Writers Guild conference. It was on the free table by author James Misko, who is he was the originator of the Alaska Writers Guild. He was one of these people who, like, it seems pretty typical for Alaska. He was in real estate and fishing, and he did like a million things and then kind of retired as an author. So yeah, I wanted to pick up something. That's what I love about a conference is there's books on those tables that you're just never going to find anywhere else. I had zero trajectory towards this book in any other way, but now that I've been there, I have it. So I just started it. Okay. Just started it the other day.
Is Misko OE or OW?
Misko.
Oh, Misko.
And it seems like but it seems like a small press, and again, which is interesting to me. And it's sort of adjacent to the things I like anyway. It's kind of about land rights and Western people and all that stuff. So yeah, it should be interesting.
Cool. All right. So I wanted to know, we were talking a little bit before we hit record this morning about our backlists, and I think we both have the same number of published books at this point.
I think so.
And I don't consider myself really as having a backlist because they're all in different genres, with the exception of the newest memoir that I just published. And I have 2 memoirs. But you are writing in a series and have since you started publishing. So I consider you as having more of a backlist than I do. And I don't know if that's an accurate, statement or how we should consider backlist. I mean, to me, backlist is really any of your other books that you've published.
Right.
So I do have
the dictionary
a backlist
definition.
But
yeah.
but the way you use it, I don't know how to use mine, I guess is the point. And so I don't consider myself as having one because I don't know how to use it. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious to
And
see how you use yours and if there's any way I can riff off that and kind of use mine.
so just for the sake of definition, your backlist is books that are published that are still in print, which is sort of a traditional publishing concept, a book being in print or out of print, that have been on the market for at least 1 year. So it's the
Okay.
stuff that fills the shelves. In the old bookstore, visual. You might have the new book turning to face you as you walk into the store. That's the new one, and then there's everything else by that author. And just as a side note, it's just in our world where there's a lot of creatives, whatever you're into, books, music, movies, there's people and all the other arts, like people are creating a lot of stuff, and discoverability is like discovering an author. You might discover that author on their 10th book. You might discover that artist you love musically on their 5th album. And so backlist to me is, as a consumer of the arts, it's the most exciting prospect of finding something new, is that if you like this book number 8, you've now got 7 other books you can read, or albums to listen to. So I think that there's this idea that like you as an author are running on new releases all the time, because new releases like tend to be your biggest boom in sales. But it's really the backlist that props all that up and makes the author thing sustainable. Because again, if you were just surviving on new releases, you'd have like a 2-month cycle of big sales, and then you'd have nothing. So that backlist is really like the again, it's like the backbone of your author business.
So
and
would
I
you
think
say that you use your backlist when you're
yes,
not publishing, I guess? So if you're trying to promote something and you don't have a book coming out soon, like me, I just
right,
published in March, so the next book is not going to come out for at least another year, I would imagine, by the
right.
time I write it and revise it and revise it and revise it and and then put it out.
I think
So
you left out a revision there. I
yeah,
think you said
I have
1, 2,
several
3, 4.
editing passes.
Right. Yeah.
So
Um,
likely it will take another year before that comes out. So I could be promoting books in my backlist then, is what you're saying.
yeah, and I think you should be, because for 2 reasons, and neither of those reasons I'm going to say have anything to do with sales. But I think the first one is it keeps people interested in what you're doing. They might have bought that book in March and read it in March, and they like you. They want more of you. And if you're not putting something new out, you could have this long dormant period with that fan that you're not giving them anything. And you can give them all of the other content, like your podcast or your pictures from your appearances and all those other things that we do as like the writer's life stuff, and they love that. But nothing satisfies that writer reader covenant quite like another book. So in my mind, at least, like I think that's what it's all aiming towards. And the other thing that it does is, I think selfishly, it makes me feel, I'm not going to put this on anybody else, they might not feel it, but like it keeps those titles alive, and it keeps those parts of the story alive in my head, so that when I'm talking about the series to other people, to other writers, to other, to people, like when I was in Alaska talking about it to people, like because I've been constantly in conversation in a marketing sense about those books, I'm able to talk about them more like openly. Like I know that I still know the sizzle to those books, and that's hard to do. Like we're human beings, we're like very drawn to the new and shiny, and it's easy to get stuck in the new and shiny. So this keeps you in the mode of like, it's that long-term relationship with the book, which I think if you are in this for the long haul, you need to cultivate that long-term relationship. And just like human relationships, there's like new relationship energy, and then there's long-term relationship energy. And I think like having some of that for your backlist is important.
The love of the backlist.
Yeah, I think just because it, once it goes away and it's not the new thing, it can, I don't know. I think for a lot of authors, it becomes like less relevant. And I think it will always be, it's not the new thing anymore. And its place is now to support the new thing, but you have to use it for it to actually support the new thing.
So how do you use it? Because I haven't been using mine.
So like right now being in sort of book launch mode, and I'm really terrible at book launch stuff because it's really hard for me not to focus on writing. So like doing all this stuff is it's just challenging. It's a challenging change in priorities. So what I end up doing is like right now, there are people on my mailing list, and if I do the math, there are many people on my mailing list that are in one of two categories. They've either downloaded that first free book and they've read it, and that's where that relationship ends. So now here's the free book, which is kind of book 0, and I'm talking about releasing book 3. I need to have some, like, they might look at that series and say, well, I've only read this book 0 and now he's talking about book 3, and you have to lead people to the logical conclusion that they need to buy those 2 books. So what I've been doing is I've been using the Amazon free days, putting one book out free on a weekend, and I'll announce it on my mailing list and say, hey, you've got, this weekend, you have this weekend to get this book for free. Or so that's one way. Like, hey, if you're ready to buy Season of the Shadows and haven't read the other 2 books, here's your chance to get those things. So it's all pushing people into that, from that, I've read the freebie, but not the others. So if that's the first place, that gets them moving into the series. That gets them into book 1, book 2, and then into book 3. The other thing that I use them for is I talk about elements in those books that connect to this book. It's sort of if you like this, then you're going to love this. And so it's reminding people who have read it. So now I've addressed the people who haven't read those books. And so that incentivizes them. Well, the people who've read it, like, hey, remember this part that you liked, this part, this person said this about this book. Well, guess what? There's this book is going to be more of that. So it's it's like, I'm using it to have introduce the conversation that the 3rd book is going to hopefully move the series into.
Cool. So you use it to move them into the new book that's coming out after reading the free book, and also
just to keep
introducing the elements,
right, and reminding those readers, hey, look, and I'm also so let's say in that newsletter I'll say, look, hey, remember in Chasing Shadows this element, and this thing happened, and you're going to find out more about that. That incentivizes 2 readers, one who's read that book and liked that book, and they're going to say, oh, well, I love that part of that book, and this is going to take me further into that element of the story. So I'm using the I've already read it relationship to spur a new sale. And then by bringing up, it gives me something to talk about, to introduce the elements that the whole series lives in, right? So for people who've only read that 0 book, who said, yeah, I've read the first one, and oh, I didn't know this was in here. Let's see how this plays out. So it's first and foremost, I use the backlist as a conversation starter about the series, to get people incentivized either to buy those books, or to move into the new one.
So for me, not having a series, I could use some of these elements as a conversation starter. I could talk about elements in, even if they're standalones, which mine are, you can still talk about the elements of one book, and that, because a lot of people, even if they're writing standalone, tend to have I don't want to say that the themes are all the same, but you do tend to have some elements remain the same. Like, it just becomes part of your voice, really.
I think that's huge, right? Like if you loved this, we've gotten into that culturally when it comes to art, right? If you loved this, you'll love this. There's a lot of that. I think a lot of readers and in all art are just, that's what they're used to, finding new things. You're just doing that with your books, within that, because you can't say you've loved this character, get them in the next one, but you're going to say, if you loved the Regency romance about this, you might like the I don't know, Victorian romance about that. Like I'm just grasping there, but like I think the relationship then is, like you said, you're just connecting the readers to, like, this is something I do, you like this, check this one out.
And I like the way you say that I like that you use your backlist as a conversation starter. I think that is pretty huge, because also, like, if you're just sitting in the bar or whatever, you're at a conference and people ask you, what have you written? What are you working on? You can talk about your backlist in that way. Well, I wrote blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I know you said in a previous episode that it's hard for you to do.
Sometimes when you put it in the bar scenario, it's super easy, but it can be hard.
What else can people do with their backlist? You've said what you do, and I've said I don't do anything, but I'm looking forward to the conversation starter part, but I just want to have, some good tips in this episode, and wondering what else.
And that's just a small piece of it. If you're newsletter marketing, that's how to use it. I think it's just to keep them, keep the old books, use the old books to talk about the new books. I think like in a broader sense, it's like, it's an opportunity to, and this is kind of from the crafting standpoint, but like, it's an opportunity to I go back into each book each time I write something, and try to find elements in it that I might have just buried, and use that to develop new story elements that I might bring into. So I think if you're looking at again, the book is not, it's hard for me to think of the book as dead. Like, now that it's out, it's gone. The story's done. So the way I rectify that is I'll go in and read it and look at it and say, okay, well, there's this little thread, this little thing in this world that I didn't follow. It's not that I didn't follow through in the book, but like, there's more here. And a lot of the seeds of things that I'm putting out on Patreon, I've actually got 2 short stories in this world that I'm just going to put out as freebies, that link different books. They're like sort of what happens in between the books, small things. Those all come from backlist, just exploration. Like, oh, right, there, I did suggest that this was out there. Now let's take that and explore that even bigger. I think fan service is just a big deal, especially if you're in a series. If people like your world, I think then, like, expanding on the backlist, again, not necessarily just projecting forward into next book, but maybe wider. Finding other things in there and saying, like, hey, there, remember this scene from this book? Well, here's a short story that addresses some of what happened here. And
I like that too.
I don't know. Like, I think backlist it's fun because it's your biggest tool marketing. It's instead of marketing with ads and things. I was just having this conversation yesterday with another author. It was about, like, not always wanting everything to be contingent on how many ads I'm running. And I think if you're having conversations about your backlist, it's that relationship is fan service. That's the better way, I think, to build your sales, is through, like, making fans happy, building fan base. If you're only putting out that new book and only talking about that, I think you're creating distance between your fans. you and your fans, and your stories and your fans. And thinking, again, like thinking going wider, you know, I've been looking at Chasing Shadows, the most recent book, which will not be the most recent book next month. And, you know, there's a character in that who's becomes Melville's sidekick. And I ended up writing basically a book about his backstory, just like where how he ended up in Canyon County, that kind of thing. Like, it's using the backlist to grow wide. That's your term, and I think it's a great one. So you can't always go long.
So speaking about that going wider, you know, picking something from the backlist and writing about that. I've seen this late, I don't know if this is a trend that's just come up in the last couple of years, but I have been noticing that there's still series, you know, like especially if it's contingent upon the forward trajectory of the story. Like there is book 1, there is book 2, there is book 3. But also I've seen other people, instead of doing book 1, book 2, book 3, it's like, you know, the Steve
1.5
McPherson series, you know, or a Canyon County book,
right?
A Canyon County novel, a story, you know. So it's allowing you to deviate from the linear trajectory. I wonder what you think about that. I mean, that's off the topic of backlist, but
no, I think it's actually adjacent to the topic of backlist, in that it's an attempt to, when I say an attempt, I'm not in no way like pointing down at it. Like, I'm not hitting down at anything. I just think that it's like, it's an attempt to take that, like I said earlier, like, right, if you put out book, you've got that free seeker, they've downloaded the first book and hopefully they've read it, and then they look up at the series and say, oh wow, they're talking about book 4, 3, 5, and I'm only on book 0. You know, they need to be led, right? Not every reader is going to intuitively just go buy your entire backlist and then fill the gap and catch up to you, even though they're out there and I love you. I love you when you do that. And actually, I just had somebody do that recently, and they told me that, like, oh, hey, I'm going to get these other books, and I could see them. I could see the page reads on which was kind of satisfying. I think that's an attempt to make all the books in the series equally relevant, and to eliminate that sort of, it's still in a publishing sense backlist, because it's, you know, it's in print and it's been out for over a year, but it's also like, there is no barrier between book 0 and book 5. They're all in this world, and if, you know,
that's so what true, because sometimes I get these, you know, like book bub lists or Libro FM or something like that, where what they're releasing is book 8 in the series, and I just click over that, like blank, blank, blank. I'm skipping it because I haven't read any of the others. So even though it sounds interesting, I'm skipping it because I don't want to have to catch up. So if it were just a book in this world, that would be more, I would be more likely to buy that.
Right.
I can see that totally. I get what you're saying.
And so I'm going to have this, you know, I think the series for me, you know, the series trajectory will continue. However, I am looking at every opportunity to create books in the world so that there's to cultivate some of that. Like, these are all mysteries that take place in a similar place, in a similar time. It's not going to be the protagonist you're used to, but if you like the world, here's another sliver of it. And I don't know, I think that's satisfying. I think fantasy authors do this well, and I think everyone can take a page out of that book.
I was just going to say, Terry Pratchett wrote several series, but they're all in the disc world. You know, this is a Discworld book. This is a Discworld book. So you can, and I can see that happening with Canyon County. This is a Canyon County book, and this is book 4 in the Strange Air series.
Right.
But you can have, then it's almost like multiple series happening at the same time. you've got some standalone books and you've got a series, but they're all in the same world.
And this all goes back to sort of the core conversation about like you're finding fans, you're finding people that like what you do. And it's less about marketing to the world at large and more marketing to the people that like what you're doing. And that sounds like, I think a lot of people will hear that, or a lot of people, and that message is out there from more than just us, but like when people hear that, I think that it can stop some people in their tracks because it feels limiting. Like, what? I'm not trying to get every mystery or fantasy author in the world onto my series. What? You're getting as many as you can, but really, like, you're building a tribe of readers. And if you can find that group of people that love what you do, then you get to do these things successfully. And yeah.
And who was it that said a billion years ago about the 1,000 true fans? I don't remember who said that, but yeah, if you've got 1,000 people that love your work and buy everything that you put out, then every book that you release, you've got at least 1,000 sales for that one book. And, that's a nice little chunk of change. It's not maybe a bestseller, but, it'll get the ball moving for sure. I would like to have 1,000 people buy my book.
I think that's the joy of self-publishing. That's the joy of the publishing world the way it is. Yes, we could all sit here and talk about how back in the day there were a lot of publishers and they published your books and they marketed them, and you as a writer could just ship. You know the old movie where like the writer gets done and then he puts the manuscript, he or she, well, it's usually a he, so let's be honest. Like in the movie, we'll put the manuscript into an envelope and send it to an editor, and then he walks away and goes, I don't know, hunting or something, right? It's like this author's life is just finishing the manuscript and handing it off, and that's it. I mean, we could all bemoan those days because they're not there anymore. And that's, but if you're going to look at it in this way, like, I think that's the joy of it. Find the people that love what you do and satisfy them. And I mean, I was just talking to Zach Godfrey the other day. We had a conversation post podcast, and it was like, that's his whole thing. Like, I'm finding the people that love what I do in the places where they are, and the ads are sort of irrelevant. I mean, they help, but like, it's more important to build those people that love what you do.
I'm going to go back to ads for just a second, because you were saying that you use the free Amazon days. So that means you are exclusive to Amazon. So for the moment. So if you are a wide author, you could still do the same thing. You just don't have the free days on Amazon, but you can still do book promos where you change your price, and you can do it. So if you're on, like, I get emails from Draft to Digital and, that says, hey, Overdrive's having a sale, or Kobo is having a sale, or, you've got all these promo opportunities. And if your book fits that genre that they're going to be promoting, then you can get promo deals for, making your book on sale. So you can drop it down to 99 cents or even free, whatever, for that like week that they're having the sale or whatever. So you can still, I don't want to use the word artificially, but like you can, if you're not exclusive to Amazon, then you can create your own like promo sort of like program, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little more, I mean, you have a wider, you have more bookshelves, more bookstores you're in, so you certainly have more opportunities to reach readers. And we all know that percentage of market share that Amazon allegedly has is shrinking all the time because there's just more players in the game. But yeah, you can certainly manufacture, I guess that's the word I would think of. Like, you can certainly manufacture your own free days, your own 99-cent days. It's just how much hands-on do you want to be with your product. And I think that's part of just what you do with the backlist. Again, the book can sit there dormant. And look, I'm not talking, crummy on ads. Like, if you found the ad sauce that gets you, 10 sales of a book a day, and you're only paying, $5 for it, great. You've really done it. That's another way to use your backlist. Figure out how to run ads to them get readers to read them, and they'll turn a regular profit. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But beyond ads, like how to handle it, yeah, you gotta use those free days. You've got to use those 99-cent incentives to keep them moving. They are what drives the next book.
Another thing you could do to promote backlist things, titles, is to re-release, or not re-release, but yeah, if you're going to re-release, like if you put a new cover on something, you can get new attention on it. Or like if you have a nonfiction title and you decide to put out a workbook edition for it, you can then be driving like, hey, I'm just putting out this workbook. If you haven't purchased the main book, here's the link for that. Or I've got that one on sale now, so that when the workbook comes out, it'll be, you know what I mean? Like you can create, you can, or I don't have any audiobooks right now, but that's my next, backlist thing I want to do. I want to go back through and create an audiobook for all of the books that are already published. So by doing that, that's going to give me new releases, which then can maybe call attention to that backlist. Since they're standalones, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to find other ways to connect. Like if I put out the backlist, or if I put out an audiobook for Smell the Blue Sky, that was my first book. It's, as you say, kind of, it's been dormant really for a while, because I mean, people are still buying it, but I can get more eyes on it, more attention on it if I, like I said, release the audiobook, or release a large print edition of it or something like that, that would bring more attention back to that older book.
And that's why I think authors are wise to do those sort of big release. Like if you're going to release your book in all those formats, if that's your long-term plan, you're going to do the ebook, the print book, you're going to do all that other stuff, audiobook. I think it's wise just to bleed that out incrementally, just to come out with it little by little by little. So that you're always having something to talk about, and treating each one of those like a mini release, so that you're constantly bringing attention to what is on your list in total.
I like the idea of having it all released at the same time, so that people have any format that they want to buy it. And so I can develop, I think, more interest, more excitement about it. Oh yeah, the audiobook's coming out. I can't wait to get that. But I like your mindset. It makes me feel better about not releasing them all out at the same time. Like it gives me permission to not have that accomplished yet. So, oh yeah. I meant to dribble it out.
That's partly how I tell myself, like the fact that I can't focus on doing, all of it at once, that I have to do it incrementally. That's how I tell myself why it works. It's like, here's what actually that means. So I think the first step is you got to build the backlist, and it has to be viable. And then I think at that point, like most things we talk about, it's like, it's sort of your process. What makes the most sense for you you can do 100 things with your backlist. You're not going to do 100 though. You need to figure out what works for your system. Like I like using it. I like playing with it and handing it out little by little and trickling readers in with it. Some people just might view it strictly as ad content, just like, this is something I can use to build a bridge to new releases via ads. That's a perfectly fine. If it works, that's all that matters.
Use it the way it makes sense for you. I like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good bow at the end of the episode.
Tied up. We did it.
Cool. I'm really happy that I got to talk to you about this, because it's giving me some ideas about how to, I haven't even, because I don't have the backlist. That's what I keep telling myself. But, according to the definition, I do have backlist. And now I've got some ideas on how to use it, but I haven't been doing ads because it didn't seem like there would be enough ROI. Like I only have one novel out right now. So I'm not going to put an ad on this one book because there's no other novels to buy after that. I have 2 memoirs now. So maybe I could start thinking about doing that, especially after I don't know. I think 3 is kind of the magic number personally, but
I have heard that 3 is the thing. It's probably the beginning of break even on if the series works, if you're doing your ads right, 3 books is the break even. That's what I've read. Because then you've got your discounted book
break
number
even
1
on ads.
On ads, yeah, that's your break even point on ads.
All right. Well,
guess
cool.
what book this is for me? It's number 3. So like that's if you want to know what's coming next, it's going to be ads.
That's another episode.
It's a whole nother episode and a whole nother therapy session, because I'm sure that of all the things I do will lead to the most, awful like self-doubt.
Since I'm a life and business coach for creatives, you can always check in. We can do a session on ads.
What did we talk about? Like me at a bar? That'll just be me at some, like, now I'm in a rural town. I'll just be sitting at some rural town talking about like, yeah, Amazon ads, man, it's real tough. To some person that probably works, some bartender or some person that actually works like a hard job, and they're going to be like, Amazon ads?
Really?
Is that really what we're talking about here? This used to be a mill town.
Well, have a wonderful week writing, and you'll just be like pumping out all these short stories and have fun with your off script writing. I don't know what to call it. Out of world writing.
Out of world. It's way out of world. Thank you.
Cool. I can't wait to read all your stuff. I really like you as a writer.
Thank you.
As a person too, but I mean, I like your writing.
I'm blushing. Even though my background is blurred.
Have a great week, Erick.
You too.
Bye-bye.